What's going on, everybody? It's Professor Gnome, and with Surging Sparks coming up in just a few days, I wanted to go over and do a set review like we normally do. So I thought I'd just kind of jump right into it, but before I do, I want to go a couple announcements. One, I want to give a special shout out to the channel members. Thank you guys so much for the additional support and watching the videos and all that kind of stuff. It really does mean a lot, and I really appreciate it. So I don't want that to be undervalued, so thank you so much. The other thing I want to say is that this video will be the final video that you can participate in the 100 pack giveaway, or pack codes rather, for the Surging Sparks giveaway for hitting the 1-year anniversary for the channel. So all you have to do is go down in the comments, leave the hashtag giveaway along with a Pokemon that you'd love to see an EX or V Pokemon for, that doesn't currently have one or that you'd like to see more relevant in the meta. The other thing too is that this is also the last video that you can participate in the Q&A. I'll be doing a Q&A video a little bit later on, so that'll come out sometime later this week, and in that video will be the winner of the giveaway and stuff like that, so be sure to check that video out when that comes out in a couple days. But this is the last video that you have the opportunity to enter into that giveaway and enter into the Q&A. So if you want to be featured in the Q&A video, all you have to do is go down into the comments, or you can go into the description of this video. There will be a link to a Google Forms. You can fill out the Google Forms if you want to submit your question, or you can leave it in the comments down below. The questions can pertain to anything. That's the purpose of the Q&A. It doesn't have to be purely Pokemon related. It can be any question you have for me as a person or as a creator. If you want to know like kind of the background and ins and outs of YouTube, or like what the analytics and stuff like that all look like, if that's something you're interested in, you can ask about that. You can ask about whatever you want. So if you're interested in that and want to have your question featured, just leave it down in the comment section down below with the hashtag Q&A, so that way it's easier to find it, or you can fill out the Google Forms and things like that. But yeah, outside of that, if you like the content and all that kind of stuff, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. Now that that's all out of the way, we can jump into the set review. Personally, with this set, I feel like some of the cards that are in it are unbelievably broken, and then the rest is kind of not that great. So, jumping right in, the first card to really talk about is the Exeggutor. It's kind of fun and wacky, where it does 60 damage, and then you just flip a coin for each energy attached to your active Pokemon, and it does 60 damage for each heads. So in theory, you could do like a fortress play where you like blow up your own fortress, you throw a whole bunch of energy onto the Exeggutor, and then you just start coin flipping and maybe popping off from there. It's like a fun, wacky meme deck. I don't think it's going to be good, but it's kind of fun. The Durant EX could have some potential. It does have the Revenge Clash attack for 120, and this attack does 30 more damage for each prize card your opponent's taken. There's a couple ways to power this up in the game right now, and it could be nice as like a late game attacker, but mainly I think it'll be used for its ability, where when you play this Pokemon from your hand onto the bench during your turn, you can discard the top card of your opponent's deck. This could be fun where you play like 4 of them, you discard the 4, but then the problem is you don't really have a way to like pick this card up. So I think it'd be good in a stall deck as like a single copy, or maybe a 2 copies, where you could use a turn to penny pick it up, you know, replace it and stuff like that. I think it'd be better if you didn't have to play it from your hand, like if you could nest ball it out. So I don't see this card getting a ton of play, but I think it could be a little bit niche. The next card is Vivian, or Vivillon, I think it's how it's supposed to be said. This card is interesting, where each of your bench Pokemon search your deck for a card that evolves from that card and put it onto and like you can evolve it. This is fine, but like I don't think it'll ever see play. It's just evolution as a TM, but you got to work a lot harder to get it. So people, if you're gonna be doing that, people are just gonna play TM evolution. Sonotic is kind of cool, where once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you can apply this ability. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now asleep. This could be fun. I don't really see it doing very well or being really all that important, but you know, it is around. It could do something in theory. All the Wo-Chan cards and stuff like that that has this weird gimmick of if there are 3 or fewer cards in your deck, the attack does a ton more. I think this could be a cool little archetype, but I just can't see a way to make it actually work and like get yourself into that card range where you don't just end up losing anyway. Moving into the fire type Pokemon, I think this Ho-Oh is actually pretty cool. I could see like doing some like casual fun decks with this where it has the Shining Blaze for 100 damage, and then if you have any bench Terra Pokemon, it does 100 more. So you're hitting for 200 damage off a random single prizer, which is pretty good. It means you're gonna 2-shot pretty much anything in the game. The fire typing is okay right now. It's not incredible, but it's also not too bad. And I think it could be just like a fun random card. I'm not exactly sure if you can make a playable deck out of it, but it could be fun. The first like actually like objectively good card that we have right now is the Victini, because what it does is it makes it so your evolution fire Pokemon do 10 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. 10 damage doesn't seem like a lot, but it actually does kind of matter, especially because of the fact that the I forget the name of the card, the Ceruledge or something like that is I think what it's called, that's coming out in this set is an evolution Pokemon, so you're going to be doing a little bit more damage with that. Just boosting your damage and fixing your damage numbers is super important, and so Victini I think is a good card right now, but I think it will only get better as we get more fire Pokemon in the meta. The rest of these cards, kind of underwhelming, not really too much going on. There's not much going on with the Centiskorch. We do see the Skeledirge here, and I think this card is kind of cool, where you prevent all effects of the attacks of your opponent's Pokemon done to this, so it's not too bad there. But it kind of just functions as like a fire Palkia, where it does 60 damage, and this attack does 20 more damage for each bench Pokemon. So it kind of just becomes a fire type Palkia in that way. It's the same thing. It's 2 energies to use it. It could be good because there's a lot of other Terra Pokemon. You could run it very similar to the way that Palkia runs, where you're running like Terra Pokemon in order to get the Area 0 Underdepth. And then the benefit of this is that it is a 1-prizer, so it's a little bit harder to set up, but you can still like rare candy to it. Once you get it set up, it's going to be a pretty strong and like hard-hitting single prizer, so I definitely could see it getting like some rogue play. Will it be very good? Probably not, but it could see some rogue play, so it's a card to look out for and kind of have some fun with. We have a couple Charcadets. Both of these are okay, but not really extremely exciting. But we do have a couple cards here that I think are good. So the Armarouge is super fun to use because what it allows you to do is you discard all fire energy from this Pokemon. This attack does 180 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon, so it allows you to kind of snipe stuff out. It could be a fun single prizer to use within the Armarouge and Arceus deck. But then if we get to the Ceruledge, I think that's how it's supposed to be said, right? Ceruledge. This card is also pretty good, and this card is probably going to see more play than the Armarouge, where you discard all special energy from each of your opponent's Pokemon. So it's just a straight Lugia counter, and if you're already playing Ceruledge or Ceruledge EX in your deck, which we'll talk about in 1 second, it's actually really powerful and can be really good, especially like I said in that Lugia matchup where your opponent places a whole bunch of special energy on the board. You're able to just bring this in, knock them all off, be really annoying, and you may give up like a single prize to do it, but it's kind of worth the trade-off. And this can also be thrown into the Armarouge and the Arceus deck, so it's definitely could see play depending on how popular Lugia continues to be. But for the main card of this set that I think is probably, in my opinion, going to be one of the best cards to come out of this set, and the card I'll probably be playing the most of out of this set, is the Ceruledge EX, where this attack does 30 damage, but then it does 20 more damage for each energy in your discard pile. It's already very, very easy to get a ton of energy in the discard. It only costs 1 energy in order to attack with it. So you're going to be able to get that ramped up very quickly. It also has a secondary attack that does 280 damage, and then you discard all energy from this Pokemon. That's totally fine because it allows you to burst down one Pokemon, and then you're just making your Abyssal Flame even stronger. I think this card's going to be really, really powerful. It's a stage 1, so it's pretty easy to get out. It only requires 1 energy. It's relatively bulky. It's a fire type, so it can be powered up very quickly. One of the other things, too, and we'll talk about it as this kind of set review goes on, that there's a lot of stage 2 hate coming in where they're really trying to nerf stage 2 decks pretty hard. And it looks like Pokemon's trying to put us into like a strong basics format again, where the game is much more accelerated. People are playing like strong, just EX basics and stuff like that. And so I think that Ceruledge will be really good because it fits into that middle ground where it's not going to be affected by the stage 2 hate, and it's going to be able to deal enough damage to beat these, you know, faster basic Pokemon and still have the HP to survive one of their attacks. So I think that Ceruledge is going to become very, very powerful going forward, and is definitely one of the highlight cards for me in this deck, or in this set. On the flip side, we have Skullvillain EX. I don't think Skullvillain EX will be that good because, for the most part, it just kind of has the Spicy Rage attack where it does 10 damage, and then this attack does 70 more damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. There's ways to boost this up, but I don't really feel like it's going to be that good, and even if you use it, you're going to end up trading a lot of the time and kind of be in a stuck situation that you don't want to be in. The one thing that is fun is that it does count as a grass or a fire type Pokemon, so when it comes to hitting weaknesses, it's kind of nice, and there's a couple like little neat mashups that could be useful in, but for the most part, I don't see it being very effective. One of the only thing that's going to hold the Ceruledge and like back as well as Skullvillain is the fact that Palkia is still very, very common, and their weakness to water is going to hurt them going forward. And I just want to point that out as we go forward. This Gouging Fire could be okay. It is an ancient card, which does help it. The more ancient cards in the game, the stronger Ancient Box gets. The more options that it gets, the better. So one of the things that it does have is the Blazing Support, where it does 100 damage. And then if your opponent has 4 or fewer prize cards remaining, it does 100 or it does 70 more damage. So it's going to be hitting for 170. This is a nice little revenge killer. That can be nice. Again, you can get it powered up pretty quickly, and just having, you know, random extra ancient cards to throw away is always beneficial. Obviously, we still want more ancient supporters and like ancient tool cards rather than Pokemon, but we'll take what we can get for right now. Going into the water Pokemon, we have the Paldean Tauros, where you do 30 damage, and you can put up to 2 energy cards attached to your opponent's active stage 2 Pokemon into their hand. This is like I was talking about. There's a lot of random stage 2 hate in this set. I don't think this card in particular will be very good. It can be good, again, as just a random card to include in like stall or counter certain matchups. Considering you could just slap it down if you're already playing double turbos. It's just a basic. You slap it down, double turbo, and you can like really annoy decks like Charizard, where all their energy acceleration comes from the fact that they use Charizard EX's ability. So if they've already used it, they don't have another way to make a new Charizard EX on the following turn. Or if their energy's in their hand and not their deck, then it doesn't even matter if they make a new Charizard EX. So it could be pretty annoying. I don't see this card in particular getting the most niche like role, but it could be pretty good in the future. I had to sneeze there for a second. Hold on. Had to sneeze again, so sorry for the minor delay. But Milotic EX is actually another card that I think could be pretty good, mostly because of the fact that it does have the Sparkling Scales, where it prevents all damage from the effects and attacks of your opponent's Terra Pokemon done to this Pokemon. This is okay. Is it incredible? No, not really, but I think as Terra Pokemon get pushed more and more, the ability to prevent all damage from them and things like that could be pretty nice. It's a thing where this card in particular is really good into things like Dracopult, where you really can't be affected. Like, Dracopult's in this weird position where most of the other walling cards kind of get past it, where it doesn't have an ability, so you can't really block it with Cornerstone. Like Mimikyu, you can get around because you just snipe the bench, even if it's, you know, even if you have Mimikyu in the active, it doesn't really matter because it's Dracopult's still doing a ton of damage to the bench and stuff like that. It can be like really frustrating to deal with. Is where Milotic does a very good job of the fact that it is pretty much immune, and then also it has the ability to put your opponent's active to sleep. It does a bunch more damage than something like Mimikyu. So it can be good. I don't think, again, this card is going to be like incredibly widespread or like really played, but if you're already playing the water deck, it's pretty good to just slap in there. It also is in this kind of weird HP total at 270 that's kind of nice, because a lot of times decks use like double Dust Noir plays in order to get around wall style cards, but that wouldn't actually be enough damage to affect the Milotic, so it actually could see play there. Walrein is okay. It does 60 damage, and then one of the other things is that during your opponent's next turn, Pokemon with 2 or fewer energies can attack. So you could combo this with doing things like you play this card, you have the Pokemon League headquarters, you go ahead and play like Giovanni's Charisma, or what's that card? The Crushing Hammers or Enhanced Hammers and things like that. And it could be kind of annoying for your opponent to have to deal with. So I think this could, again, be like a random fun rogue deck. Do I think it'll be good? No, but I think it could be fun. So it's something worth kind of looking into. Karam Blackiax. I personally don't think this card is very good. It's not a dragon, so it can't be utilized by something like Regidrago V-Star. And the Ice Age attack for 90 damage, and if your opponent's active Pokemon is a dragon Pokemon, it is now paralyzed. Doesn't really matter. The paralyzation of cards is a very, very powerful effect, but unfortunately only hitting for 90 isn't really enough when a lot of decks that you would be hitting, like a lot of the dragon decks that you'd want to attack into, are going to have a lot of outs anyway. Again, something like Dracopult is just going to be looping either pennies, or like some of them are still playing Super Scoop Up or whatever. So I don't think that the Karam Blackiax is really going to matter. It's a really strong Regidrago counter because they don't really play away. They don't also really play switches or anything like that. So you would just lock Regidrago in the active for a little while. But even then, I don't think it's very good, and I kind of think this card is mid, which is upsetting, because, like, them bringing back Kyurem is such a cool card, and such a cool Pokemon, that for it to have kind of such a weak card is underwhelming. But I hope I'm wrong. Bruxish doesn't matter. None of these cards are really all that good. None of these are really all that important. Shenpao is okay, where if you play it from your hand, from your bench, you can discard the Stadium. I don't think this card's really irrelevant right now, but it could be good in the future, so it'd be worth having like a copy or two, just in the sense that we never know what new stadiums, what new stuff could be on the horizon, and so having cards and effects like this in the game are nice as like preventative measures in the future, but for right now, I don't think it really does much. Getting into some of the cards that I do think are very, very good from this set. Again, like I said, I feel like this set is a lot of duds, but the cards that are good are going to be like meta-defining. And Pikachu EX is another great example of that. It's a basic card that has a pretty good ability with the Endearing Heart, where if this Pokemon is full HP and would be knocked out by damage from an attack, it is not knocked out and it remains with 10 HP. Now, obviously, you can get around this ability in a lot of different ways, but for the most part, it's a pretty strong ability to have, especially with its low HP total at 200, meaning that it would be knocked out by most things. Obviously, Frostlass, things like that are going to be a really big problem for this kind of card, but for the most part, it's pretty good, and I also really like the Pikachu. I think that it's going to be able to be powered up pretty easily, and the fact that it hits for 300 is a very good amount of damage. to be able to hit. There's ways to boost your damage outside of this. So overall, it's going to be really, really good. There's also a stadium card coming out a little bit later, or like up later in this set, that's going to help us out a lot, that reduces the health of stage 2 Pokemon. And so everything's going to be, there's not a card in the game really, except for a few, that Pikachu won't be able to one-shot if that stadium's down. So the concept is like, you bring Pikachu into the active, you one-shot something, it attacks into you, you're guaranteed to live because you have your ability, and then you get to one-shot the next thing. And that's really, really powerful. We also have Magneton. Magneton is what I think is going to be paired with Pikachu. I also think it's just an incredibly, very strong energy accelerant, where once during your turn, you can attach up to 3 basic energy cards from your discard pile to your lightning Pokemon in any way you like, and if you use this ability, this Pokemon's knocked out. So you do give up 1 prize card, but it doesn't specify what type of energy, it just says basic, which means you can grab all the energy you need to re-attack with Pikachu instantaneously, since it still is an electric Pokemon. So you can use Magneton, repower up Pikachu, attack, your Pikachu survives, you give up 1 prize card, you take another 2, and then you just win that prize race over and over again. So I think it's very, very strong. Probably one of the best cards coming out of this set. I still think Ceruledge will have a higher meta relevance, but I could be wrong. This card's very, very good. Also, there's no fighting. There's really no good fighting types in the game, and so you don't really have to worry about getting hit for weakness. Not that that would really matter, because you only have 200 HP anyway, so almost everything is one-shotting you. Looking at the Rotom can be really, really fun in stall decks, or even against stall decks in some cases, because what it does is that your opponent reveals their hand, and they discard any item or Pokemon tool card they find there. This should be pretty big, because a lot of times in stall matchups, whether you are the stall player or you are against stall, that both of your hands just get very, very large and full of a bunch of random cards that you're just not able to play at the moment that could be useful, or like you're holding on to certain cards to try to get a combo off to kind of break the matchup. And Rotom just kind of comes in and gets rid of all of that and can be really nice. Its secondary attack really doesn't matter. It's more just for the Crash Pulse. I don't think it'll be played a ton, but I think we'll see it in a couple decks here and there. Outside of that, there's not a lot of other cards in this set that I think are very good. Tapu Koko is fun, but again, not really all that great. It's just like a little revenge killer. I could see it being good in like Gym Leaders Cup or Gym Leader Challenge, but outside of that, I don't really see it being good. Kilowattrel EX is extremely sad. It's really sad to see the United Wings cards start getting EXs that are terrible. All this thing does is that it kind of does like a switch out, where you can switch this card with under your bench Pokemon. If you do, you can search up to, or you can attach up to 2 basic lightning energy from your hand to this Pokemon, so you already have to have the lightning energy in your hand before it does anything. And then there's the Thunder Lance, which does 40 damage and then 40 more for each electric energy attached to this Pokemon. There are ways to power this up very quickly, but not enough that the damage is ever going to really matter. Getting it on a stage 2 with that HP total is just not really worth it, especially when you have so many other lightning options in the game. There's really no real benefit to playing this card, and it's kind of sad to see that this card is so bad, but yeah, it's not great. Togekiss, I'm very interested to see how this card kind of shapes out in the meta, because it does have a really interesting ability called Wonder Kiss, where whenever your opponent's active Pokemon is knocked out, you flip a coin. If heads, you take 1 more prize card. This could, with good luck, end up turning games into just needing 2 knockouts, because you would knock out a 2-prizer, you flip heads, you take 3, and then you do that all over again, you flip heads, and you just close out the game. I don't know if people are going to want to play around this kind of like luck variant, but I do actually think in decks where you're playing a really strong single prizer, some sort of basic or even stage 1 single prizer, looking at something like a Azumarill, then you may as well, because you're already looking to be plus up in prize cards anyway, doing the 1 for 2 trade, and just making that a little bit easier could be nice. I could see Togekiss having a spot in a couple different decks for sure, especially like if you have this, your opponent's at like 2 prize cards, you're at 3, or even if you're at 4, you play like rare. You play that down, you're getting an extra prize card from that. You flip heads with Togekiss, you're taking 4 prize cards in 1 turn off a single knockout. That could be huge. Zoomeril is pretty fun, where you Double Edge used by this Pokemon costs 1 Psychic less if you have any Terra Pokemon in play. Or, sorry, costs only 1 Psychic if you have a Terra Pokemon in play. So there's a lot of ways to get that powered up and get that into play. There's a lot of Terra Pokemon to utilize, so it's pretty nice. Latios EX is something that I think is going to be very, very good. I think that the ability for the Skyline, where your basic Pokemon have no retreat cost, is super, super powerful. We've seen a lot of decks already using this with like things like Gouging Fire and stuff like that. I think this ability is going to be very, very powerful, and goes back into my theory that they really want to make just like basics kind of the way to play going forward for the next little bit. We had kind of a stage 2 era. I think we're going back into that basics, kind of running the meta format, but we will see. The rest of the Psychic cards, again, not really too great. You could use Cofagrigus, where you put 6 damage counters on each Pokemon that has an ability. That could be fun, but I don't think it's going to be very good overall. This card could be okay. You have Tempting Tail, so you must discard a Carefree Cat toy from your hand in order to use this ability. But once during your turn, you can switch your opponent's bench Pokemon to their active. So it's just kind of a boss's orders, where you can discard an item card in order to utilize it. I don't think it's going to really be used, because it does take a couple different random pieces. But for some decks, it could be useful if you're already playing that. So the Sylveon EX I actually think is pretty good, and I'd love to see more evolutions come out, especially now that we have the faster evolving Eevee that we'll look at in a minute. But its first attack does 160 damage, and during your next turn, your opponent's defending Pokemon attacks do 100 less. So if you're able to manipulate that, it could be pretty good. But also it has the attack where you choose 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. They shuffle these Pokemon and all cards attached into their deck, and if your opponent, if you use this attack, you can't use it again on the next turn. But that being said, this kind of attack is really, really powerful, because let's say you're up against something like Charizard, for example, and it's like Charizard EX in the active, and they have like Pidgeot and another Charizard. Well, you can just go ahead and use this. You remove their Pidgeot, you remove their Charizard, make it so they probably aren't going to be able to build up a new one right away, because they've already probably used their rare candies, their setup. A lot of times Charizard players don't really have the best hands, because they can always rely on Pidgeot to kind of fix it. You can get rid of that and then just knock out the Charizard on the following turn. This is a very early game play, I think, and especially because you could probably get this powered up pretty quickly, especially with the Eevee that allows you to evolve even on your first turn. So you could get this play off, be really disruptive, and it doesn't even need to be like all the way to the Pidgeot. You could do this on a random Pidgey on the bench and a random Charmander, go into turn 2 and knock out the active, just really delay them, be super annoying. I think this card could actually see some play and be like pretty good. Palossand, unfortunately, is pretty bad. I don't really see this card getting much play. There's a lot of cards that kind of do what it does better, where like even the jail attack, where you put damage counters on each of your opponent's bench Pokemon until there's 100 remaining, that's still enough HP that it doesn't really matter. So I don't see this seeing much play, unfortunately, but Palossand's pretty cool, so kind of wish that it would. Moving forward into the fighting type cards, again, fighting is just a type that has not seen much love for a long time. We do have Flygon EX, which I think could be okay, where this attack does 100 damage for each of your opponent's EX and V Pokemon. This is a very, very powerful attack because of the fact that V Pokemon and things like that are super, super common. EX Pokemon obviously kind of run the game. Most decks at all times are going to have at least 2 or 3. So you're going to be knocking out just about anything you want to. It has a pretty high HP total, which is nice. And then you also have the attack for the Stormback, where you do 130 damage, and then you switch with this Pokemon with a bench Pokemon. So you could do like a hit and run strategy with it as well. So I think it could be good. I think Flygon EX definitely has a place in the meta for sure. How good it will be overall, I'm not sure, but it definitely will have a place. This card, however, is the Stage 2 hate that I was talking about, where it has the... So the Gastrodon has the ability Sticky Bind, where as long as this Pokemon is on your bench, bench Stage 2 Pokemon have no ability. This is huge. I keep sneezing, sorry. This is huge because it pretty much means that, like, Pidgey isn't a card anymore, or, like, Pidgeot isn't a card anymore. Your opponent can't use a bench Charizard EX to power things up into the active. Like, a play that Charizard EX does all the time is that they have a random, you know, one prizer or something stupid in the active that has 1 retreat cost. They bring Charizard EX. They accelerate 2 energy onto their Charizard, 1 onto the active, retreat it, bring in their new Charizard. They won't be able to do that now because the Charizard is starting on the bench. There's a lot of different Pokemon that are really affected by this. The other thing, too, is that it's not just EX Pokemon. It's just bench Stage 2 Pokemon, meaning Archeops cannot use its ability. Actually, am I wrong about that? I have to check, because I can't remember if Archeops counts as a Stage 2 because of its fossil start. I can't remember. I think it does, but I could be wrong on that. I just like mind blanked really quick on forgetting if it's a Stage 2 or not, but I think it is, and that it is mind blanked, but you know, fact check that later. But yeah, there's just a lot of Stage 2s. This card is going to be incredibly simple to get out. You just leave it on your bench. It's a huge pain for your opponents to have to deal with, and most of the time, if you're not playing a Stage 2, you don't care that it's there and that it's also affecting you. So I think this card is huge. It's going to be a really, really great counter to have. Obviously, Pidgeot helps enable so many decks, and so it's like just being able to shut that off is going to be really, really big. Unfortunately, none of the rest of these fighting type cards are really all that good or really do all that much. Going into the dark cards, we have Hydreigon EX. Hydreigon EX is crazy. The Crushing Heads does 200 damage, and then you discard the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. So obviously just being able to disrupt your opponent is super, super big, can really matter. And then the Obsidian attack for 130 damage, and this attack does 130 damage to 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon as well. Just being able to spread that much damage around, if you can power this up fast enough in the early game, just being able to be super, super disruptive to your opponent could be really big, knocking out their bench targets. I think Hydreigon is really good, and we'll see play going forward into the meta, even with the Stage 2 hate, because it doesn't really need too much to function. It's kind of just in a really good place. Going into Steel-type Pokemon in this set, there's not really many good Steel-type Pokemon. We do have the Archaludon EX, where when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, during your turn, you can attach up to 2 basic metal energy from your discard pile to your metal energy, or to your metal Pokemon in any way you like. This is nice just because it allows you to kind of get this card powered up as quickly as possible, or power something else up. I don't really think you're going to be using this card's ability with something else. Like, you're not really going to be using this to power up a different card, because at that point you'd just be using Metang anyway. You're probably just going to be using this to power itself up, and its attack for 220 damage is nice. During your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon has no weakness. I don't think that really matters, but it could be okay. Overall, I think this card's okay, but not great, but we'll just kind of have to see what it does. The Alolan Exeggutor EX is very, very fun, where it has the Tropical Fever, where it does 150 damage, and then you attach any number of basic energy cards from your hand to your Pokemon in any way you like. This is just a way to help speed up your energy acceleration of the game. It could be good. It's not really exciting, but it could be fun. The main thing is the Swing Spear attack, where You flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active basic Pokemon is knocked out. If tails, you choose one of your opponent's bench basic Pokemon. That Pokemon is knocked out. So this card is really good in the sense that I'm predicting that we see a large amount of basic Pokemon in the meta. And we see like a large emphasis on basic Pokemon coming into the meta going forward. And so if that's the case, it's not really going to matter if you flip heads or tails. You're just going to be taking a knockout no matter what. It's going to be pretty hard for them to knock you out since you have no weakness. You're not a stage 2, and you have that 300 HP hit total where that's not going to be affected by anything. It's pretty hard for most of the regular basics to knock you out. And it's just really fun. I love just the randomness of it. I really like Alolan Exeggutor EX. I don't think it's going to be the most competitive deck ever, but I do think it's going to be kind of a fun rogue deck to be on the lookout for. There's a couple other dragon cards, but none of them really do all that much or have that much relevance, unfortunately, at least that I'm aware of. There's a couple different things, so you could throw like Eternatus in a Regidrago deck, since, you know, just being able to discard a Stadium hit for 230 damage could be nice, but I don't really think they're going to do that. The Toxagiri EX I think is kind of bad. It has the Sucker Punch pump where it does 100 damage, and then this attack isn't affected by the effects of your opponent's active Pokemon. This could be fine. I feel like you're just going to throw this in Regidrago, if anything, just to have it as an extra kind of thing to like get around Mimikyus and stuff like that. But one of the other things is that it has the lure attack where you look at the top 10 cards of your deck, put any number of Pokemon you find there onto your bench, shuffle. This doesn't really help Regidrago. It could be okay, but the energy investment into it makes it so it's not really going to speed up any deck. Most decks don't want to run this energy combination anyway to power this up. So I really don't see Toxagiri doing too much. Like I said, it could be used in Regidrago. But yeah, I don't think so. I don't see this card getting much play, but maybe I'll be wrong. The Eevee with the boosted evolution I think is very good right now. It helps out the Sylveon a lot, but also I think in the future we will be getting a lot more better Evolution EXs, and if that's the case, then this Eevee's going to come in very handy. The other big card from this set is Slacking EX, where it has the Slacking Off ability, where if your opponent has no Pokemon EX or V in play, this Pokemon cannot attack. But as we know, EX Pokemon and V Pokemon incredibly common. And this thing has the great swing attack where it does 280 damage. And you discard an energy from this Pokemon. Doesn't really matter, it's only a 2 energy attack cost. So you're going to be able to get through that pretty quickly. 280 damage is really nice. The only thing that is a little bit upsetting is that it is a stage 2, so it's going to take a little bit of time to get into. It is extremely bulky though, and that's actually really nice because it does mean that Pikachu won't be able to knock it out, even with the Stadium in play that reduces stage 2 Pokemon's HP, which is very good. And the reality is, like I said, if we're going into that basics format, Slacking is going to be very powerful in that format, I think. Moving on to Kecleon, doesn't really do much, but it does have that fun ability that we see every so often where, you know, any damage done to this Pokemon if you flip heads is prevented, which is just kind of fun. It's not good, but it's fun. Moving forward, not a lot of other cards to really talk about. There's the Cyclizar EX, which has the Breakthrough attack for 3 colorless energy. It does 130 damage, and then this attack does 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon, so it's not very good, unfortunately. And then it does have the Road attack for 180 damage, and then you can draw 5 cards. This is good, but I don't really see it getting play all that much. Again, the 3 energy requirement, the resources you're going to have to put into it, the 180 damage just isn't really enough. Could it see play? Maybe, but I kind of doubt it. Flamingo EX is the same thing as the Kilowattrel. It's a United Wings card that gets an EX that unfortunately still just is not very good at all. It does 130 damage, or sorry, it does 30 damage, and then if this Pokemon and your opponent's active Pokemon have the same energy, the same amount of energy attached, this attack does 100 more, so it's only hitting for 130 at best. Or you can do Brave Bird for 200, and then it does 30 damage to itself. So again, nothing that you'd really want to use. It's kind of just a collector card, not really a good one. Getting into the trainer cards, the Amulet of Hope. If this Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, you search your deck for up to 3 cards, put them in your hand, and then shuffle your deck. This card is good in a vacuum, but the reality is that people will discard it with Lost Vacuum, and also more often than not, the 3 cards that you get aren't really going to matter as much. Amulet of Hope is okay. I just don't see... Okay, in theory, it's really good, right? The problem is that it's not good enough to replace some of the other A-Spec options we already have available to us in the game, which is the major issue going forward with a lot of A-Spec cards. We have new berry cards. We have one for metal Pokemon where you take 60 less damage and then you discard the card. This is nice to kind of shore up weakness stuff or kind of take a little bit less from like key matchups. Thing like going against Charizard EX, being able to play the berry, reduce 60 damage, makes you live an attack that you would normally get knocked out against, or even something like if they, I don't think they made a one for dragons yet, but they're niche. We haven't seen them get play. We probably won't see them get play unless there's like a really just pure dominant deck that you just need to invest that level of counter to. But I don't think that the berries will ever really see too much play. We have the Brilliant Blender. Search your deck for up to 5 cards and then discard them. This is really nice for like Lugia and a couple other matchups. I just don't think they're going to get rid of something like the Legacy Energy and stuff like that. I think Legacy Energy just provides too much value, but we'll see what happens going forward. The Call Bell is kind of cool, where you can play this card if you're going second, but only on your first turn. You can search your deck for a supporter card, reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle your deck. This could be played probably like 2 or 3 copies. I feel like you wouldn't want to run 4 copies in actually a deck like Raging Bolt might want to run 4 copies of this, just because of the fact that you want to be able to like guarantee the vitality for the attack on turn 1. But like this card was only good, I think, if your deck is designed to go second, because if your deck's designed to go first, could you end up going second? Like, yeah, but you don't want to invest 4 cards into what might happen. I don't think it's going to be very good. The Chill Teaser Toy is okay. You can put an energy attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon into their hand, but you can only play it if you go second and only on your first turn. So like, it's annoying if it comes up and can delay your opponent a little bit potentially, but there's so much energy acceleration in the game, I don't think it's going to matter. Quick Wit allows you to heal 60 damage from one of your electric Pokemon. That's probably never going to matter. There is a berry for dark Pokemon. That's pretty cool against things like Charizard, but we've kind of seen that fallen out of favor in the recent meta anyway. So again, I don't think that berry is going to come up, but if Hydreigon kind of starts to take over, it could be good. The Counter Gain is actually a pretty good card, where if you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent, the attacks of your opponents, this card costs 1 colorless less, or sorry, let me reread that because the way I read that sounded crazy. If you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent, the attacks of the Pokemon this card is attached to cost 1 colorless less, which can be pretty nice. It's really card dependent, what you're going to want to play this with, but I think it could see play for sure. Outside of that, I don't really feel like there's a lot of really like good cards Dusk Ball is interesting, being able to look at the bottom 7 cards of your deck. This is nice if you get like randomly Iono'd or something, and you know the card you want it is at the bottom of your deck, but outside of that. Energy Search Pro, search your deck for as many basic energy cards of different types, reveal them, put them in your hand. That's nice, but I don't really think that's what you'd want to spend your ace spec on, especially because them being in your hand doesn't really matter that much. Gravity Mountain is crazy. This is the stadium I was talking about before, where stage 2 Pokemon in play get minus 30 HP. This means that Dracopult is sitting at 280, which is a very easy range to KO, including like even if you're playing it in slacking yourself, you're still KOing things. Charizard is at 300, which is again pretty easy to KO, and it just kind of brings a lot of those cards into a range that a lot of like big basics are able to KO them or, you know, hit for enough damage. Outside of that, we do have the Lisa's Appeal, where you can switch one of your opponent's bench basic Pokemon to the active slot. The new active Pokemon is now confused. Just play Boss's Orders. It's the same thing, just better, because you don't have to worry about if it's a basic or not, and the confusion doesn't really matter, because most of the time if you're bossing something up, you're trying to knock it out anyway. Lively Stadium, this is really good. Basic Pokemon get 30 plus HP, so again, they're really pushing, nerfing stage 2s and upping the abilities of basics, so we'll see that a lot. The Megaton Blower, discard all Pokemon tool card and special energy attached to each of your opponent's Pokemon and discard any stadium in play. Again, this will be really good if something like Lugia just like takes over the meta, but I don't think it will. There's so many cards that they've printed to kind of hold Lugia back, so I don't see this card getting much play, but it is very good for the future. The Miracle Headset, I don't really think is very good. You can put up to 2 stadium cards in from your discard pile into your hand. And to sneeze again, this is insane. I don't think this is very good. You're not really, again, it's not that it's not a good card, it's just not what you want to be spending your ace spec on. In comparison to something like this, which the Precious Trolley, you can search your deck for any number of basic Pokemon, put them into your bench, and then shuffle your deck. This is huge. If you get this on turn 1, which you can like search out with like an Arvin or something, being able to put any number of basic Pokemon, and because it doesn't specify that it, you know, it can't be an EX or something like that. So that's your Greninja, like your Radiant Greninja. It's all your Gouging Fires. If you're even if you're playing something like Charizard, right? It's your 2 Charizard, or it's your 2 Charmander, your Pidgey, your Rotom V. Like, I think this card is nuts. Honestly, it may be the best card in the entire set. Probably it just became maybe the best ace spec in the entire game. The things this card allows you to do are nuts, and honestly, I'm kind of surprised it got printed. Moving on, Scramble Switch. Switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. Then you may move any energy attached to the old active to the new one any way you like. I think this card is okay, but not probably going to see much play. Terra Orb allows you to search your deck for a Terra Pokemon, reveal it, put it in your hand. I don't really think that that's super necessary, but it could be used. Then the Enrich Energy, as long as this card is attached to your Pokemon, it provides 1 colorless energy. When you attach this card from your hand to a Pokemon, draw 4 cards. No one's ever going to play this, because again, the value of ace specs, it's like, I could play the Trolley that just like wins me the game, or I can draw 4 cards. I'm going to play the Trolley. But yeah, that's the list. That's the set review. I tried to speed this up. I feel like my set reviews go really, really long, so I tried to speed this up and go through it as quickly as possible, but I still feel like it went a little bit long, because I don't think there's really a way to do this incredibly quickly, where I'm still talking and giving my opinion and like actually saying something that might matter. But yeah, that's kind of going to be the set review, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this kind of content, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Just again, want to give a shout out to the channel members. Thank you guys so much for that. And yeah, also, like I said before, be sure to put your questions for the Q&A video down in the comment section below, or you can go to the Google Forms in the description. All of that will be available. And yeah, also be sure to leave your comment for the giveaway. Just remember to have the hashtag Q&A or hashtag giveaway respectively. So that way it's easier to find when I do that drawing and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's just about it, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you guys so much for watching. All the YouTube stuff, you know, like, comment, subscribe, all that. Be sure to let me know what you want to see in the next video, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.